Well, hey, friends, thanks for joining me today. A lot of people are reaching out and asking, Mark, what is Governor Walz like? I mean, he's been the governor of Minnesota for like 6 years, and now he's put up to be the vice president of the United States. And so what kind of person is he? I mean, what can we expect? What would this look like? What would be the trajectory of the United States with his influence? And so I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and share some thoughts with you, show some video clips of some of the things that he said and how that's been kind of worked out. And I've asked Renee Carlson. Renee is the general counsel for True North Legal. It's an independent public interest law firm affiliated with Minnesota Family Institute. True North promotes, defends life, family, religious freedom, and is engaged in the education side of things and the public policy, and then, of course, in the court. So, Renee, thanks for joining me today.
Great. Good to be here with you, Mark. As you said, True North Legal is an initiative of the Minnesota Family Council, which is an organization that works in public policy. We're at the Capitol quite a bit in education, helping the citizens of Minnesota understand what's going on with the government, what's going on in the courts, and why does it matter for my life. And we are just excited to be here, excited to partner with you and helping people understand what has it been like living under this Walz administration.
Yeah, well, you've done a great job. You and I have tracked a lot in these recent days, and the other day you were in Washington working on different things. So thank you for helping not just Minnesota. Thank you for helping the country. And True North Legal, just so you know, is a nonprofit, and we support them. We support you because you're trying to help support the nuclear family, religious freedom, and bless you for that. So Renee, what I want to do is show a video clip. Jesus said you'll know them by their fruits. So what comes out of a person, what they say, and then what they do matters.
Right.
And specifically, in an election cycle and so forth, there's things that people have done, and then they try and cover those up. They say different things. They try these different switches. So I just want to show this video clip, and then I want you to respond, and you tell us what you've seen in light of Governor Walz's statement. Okay, so let's watch this.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case, and for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
There it is. Don't shy away from our progressive values. What kind of progressive values has Governor Walz implemented? I mean, his team, the legislative branch that we've seen here in the United States, because it will have implications for the whole country in the days ahead.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that, as you said, you will know a person by their fruits. So no matter if it's Governor Walz, if it's someone on the Democratic side, if it's someone on the Republican side, we will certainly know a person by, what comes out of their mouth, what kind of policies they pass, what kind of laws they will and won't defend. So it's certainly at True North Legal, I have experience with that. And also as a lobbyist for the Minnesota Family Council, I have experience for that, kind of wearing both hats. So specifically, as you mentioned in the introduction, my role is to protect and defend life, family, and religious freedom here in Minnesota. So I think I will probably start with life, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Kind of what happened. If we go chronologically, it has been quite a swift process at the state capitol. So in 2023, the legislature passed what has been called the PRO Act. They called it the Protect Reproductive Options Act. And that put into Minnesota statute a fundamental right to abortion for any individual at any age with no restrictions. So up to birth. I mean, this is just astounding. And as you speak of it in a Christian perspective, it just doesn't really reconcile with our ethos on humanity and human life. And again, this isn't just women. This is our daughters. This is young girls, as young as a 12-year-old, able to get an abortion up to birth. And I think that's quite astounding. And it's actually one of the most extreme abortion laws throughout the country.
Throughout the country. And so if Governor Walz, if we take him at his word where he says, we want to back down from our progressive values, then he would probably be pushing that forward, or those sorts of values regarding abortion at whatever level of influence he has.
Right.
Is that fair to say? Or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's certainly not a moderate position as far as abortion. I mean, even with respect to, laws like, or when we had Roe v. Wade, we had like a viability. I mean, we're not even talking about like a certain week where we can have an abortion. Some of the floor debate, legislators were proposing, what about 39 weeks? What about, some sort of litmus test? And there was no bites on that. So the trifecta passed the PRO Act. And again, it's ushering in abortion up to birth with no limitations. And Mark, what's worse is that they removed all health and safety guardrails for women and young girls seeking an abortion. And again, from True North Legal's perspective in Minnesota Family Council, we do not think that abortion is safe or is the answer, but abortion is like the only, quote, procedure or medical procedure that now has, it's treated differently. Why don't we treat this like somebody going in to get an appendectomy, or somebody even going in to get their tonsils taken out, or even get their ear piercing? Why have we removed all of these guardrails with respect to something where women are actually being harmed? There's a lawsuit that just happened this term at the United States Supreme Court, in which the evidence came out that 1 in 25 women using abortion drugs will be harmed by them, medically harmed, and have to go to the hospital. So we know that abortion isn't super safe. It's touted as it's just the same as Tylenol. Women are hemorrhaging, they're bleeding out, and now we're going to leave them to potentially have mail order abortions by themselves in their bathrooms. And this is really concerning when we're talking about young women, like I said, our daughters. I mean, it's really concerning. So some of the laws that were repealed were the hospital-only law. So after the first trimester, having to go into a hospital to get an abortion, removal of the physician-only law, in which physicians could only offer an abortion or could only do an abortion procedure. And why does that matter? Because you want somebody who can handle these dangerous complications that often come with abortion. Again, now the Attorney General said on his website, we can do abortions with telehealth. So now we're prescribing medicine through telehealth, through these dangerous procedures, again, where our daughters could be having an abortion in the bathroom without us even knowing it. There's also been a lot of chatter about the Infants Born Alive Protection Act, which was amended. So instead of mandating life-saving care for infants born alive who survive an abortion, now we just have comfort care. And I've shared with other media that I was there in the hearing room when an EMT, who is a legislator, talked about how comfort care is not the same as life-saving respiratory care. So I can't see how there could be any argument that there was any other intent when we removed explicit language from the statute that demanded that protection. And I've said now reptiles and cattle in Minnesota have more legal protections and rights when it comes to their health with respect to abortion than Minnesota women and young girls.
Wow. And, I don't know where our listeners are. I don't know where you're at, those of you that are joining us. But what I know is this: as you read through the Bible as a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ, that the Bible says that life is sacred, that God created them male and female, that God created life is so sacred. In fact, God instituted human government. In Genesis chapter 9, God says we're going to institute human government because life is so sacred that if someone takes the life of another individual, the government's job was to punish evildoers and to give praise to those who do right. And so really the uniqueness of the Christian worldview is that each of us are made in the image of God. We're image bearers. And our lives are sacred. And that begins at conception, Psalm 51 says. And so that's why Christians, I think, as I talk with people, they're like, why are you Christians so, concerned about this? Because life is sacred to God. And, and if people just even take just a quick read through the Old Testament, you see how sacred it is with God. When the Jews were coming into the land of Israel, he told them, do not follow the practices of the Canaanites. And they were offering their children to sacrifices. And the Bible describes that as killing of the innocent. And warned them if they did that, there would be consequences to them. In 2 Kings, Israel had a horrible king. His name was Manasseh, and they were killing their children. They were offering them as sacrifices, and God sent the prophets and warned them, but they were not willing to listen. And as a result, God said, your nation is going to be destroyed, and they were carried off in the Babylonian captivity. In other words, God's perspective of this matters, and it affects the whole nation, affects everybody. And what I always tell people is, like, if you've had an abortion or you've paid for an abortion, I just want you to know that Jesus is the solution. I mean, none of us get through this life without the brokenness and the heartache and the sorrow. And so it's not just a matter of dealing with the legal elements. There's the theological elements of God saying that life is sacred, but also if you've experienced that, maybe you've had an abortion, paid for an abortion, encouraged abortion. Man, I've dealt with hundreds of people over the years who carry that weight. and the solution is Jesus. He's the only one that can help us navigate all of those emotional things and the losses that we feel. And so I just want to encourage you, look to Jesus.
I think, the emotional impact of having an abortion is tremendous on women and young girls. And that's something that can't be underestimated, particularly with our engagement with all people as believers. I mean, we don't know who's walking into our churches. Lots of women end up finding the Lord through, unfortunately, having had an abortion, and the pain and suffering that they've had that takes a long time to heal. And, something else that happened legislatively was the removal of funding to pregnancy resource centers and women's clinics who actually serve women that want to keep their children. It's just astounding that we're taking away money that is going to such a good cause. That is actually the benefit of family flourishing, that is helping women get on their feet and who say, I don't want an abortion. I actually want to keep this child, and I would if I knew that I had help. And now under this legislation, that's gone. And so it's just, what is the ethos of this state? And as you said, I mean, we know people by their fruits, and this is not an endorsement of anybody or any candidate. It's just a matter of fact conversation about what has happened and what are we to infer from that? What are we to infer from removing these funds from clinics that serve these women, that serve these children? I mean, that offer diapers, that offer tons of services. And the Attorney General has gone really hard on his website, going after these clinics, calling them fraudulent when they actually have medical professionals working at them. They have licensed sonographers working at them. I'm not sure why that's inconsistent with the requirements of the medical profession. I would argue that it's absolutely consistent. And these pregnancy resource centers and clinics, they also need our support and our help, because they're boots on the ground with these women, getting them, at ground zero, intercepting at decisions that are really life and death.
Yeah, we as a church have helped save hundreds and hundreds of kids, and it's just a joy to be used by the Lord in that way.
You never know where you're going to meet somebody, where they're at personally. And we had an experience like that even at our own church. And it was just phenomenal. I've been in this space doing life advocacy for quite some time. It's actually really special and dear to me because of my own family story and my own actually birth story. But you just never know. And I think sometimes as Christians, we categorize these issues. We think, okay, I'm pro-life and they're pro-choice, or, I don't say choice. They're just the abortion industry and people who are life affirming. But you kind of categorize in your mind. But when you start to engage that this is like a reality of just being a believer and living in this world, this is a result of sin, it means something different to you. So yes, these are policies and statutes that have been repealed, but these are things that are impacting real people's lives. I mean, they're at the crossroads, and the Bible speaks to that. And I'm thankful for True North Legal and Minnesota Family Council and people like you and Revive and your ministry, that you're meeting women where they're at, because with the trajectory of things right now, they're definitely going to need us. They're going to need the church.
Okay, so there's the progressive element right there. How did you define that? Like, no restriction abortion?
No guardrails.
No guardrails.
No guardrails.
Well, what about religious freedom? What kind of progressive ideas have we seen over the last, 6 years or so here in the state of Minnesota?